Well, hello everybody, I'm Carlton Pearson, and welcome to Streaming Consciousness, a program designed to provoke you and somehow promote you to expanded thinking, expanded consciousness, to tap your mind and your spirit and your intellect, your very soul, to stretch its expanses to other ways of thinking and experiencing and expressing yourself and your soul in the earth. So we tap, as my friend Charles Holt sings. And I know it's a little provocative the way I approach some of my angles that I use about stuff, but I'm here to make you think and rethink. That's what the Greek word repentance means. It means to rethink or to reconsider, or after you've thought, think again. So we tap every week and we motivate you. I'm going to talk to you tonight from the subject of the Ferguson tragedy. I've waited to make my public comments about it and to post anything until now. I wanted to hear more of the results of what the grand jury would hand down, the people's response to it, and other comments. And I just wanted to observe. I was in St. Louis not long ago ministering, and I was watching the news and how the local news was handling the Ferguson situation, which was somewhat different than what I was seeing in national news. And I want to open my comment as I did in the Post tonight, earlier this week. Neither the government nor the racist organized crime syndicates within it and within the entire American penal system care anything about our using the race card to protest obvious and consistent bias, bigotry, prejudice, and injustice in the Ferguson situation or anywhere else on the planet. We've done that for years. Here again, we see with this tragic death of Michael Brown and the entire Ferguson tragedy and debacle, we're viewing ego, as we often do, especially in these young men, ego, anger, adrenaline, testosterone, lawlessness, fear, racism, and irresponsibility, all making a toxic combination resulting in violence, death, destruction, and national demonstration, or I say sometimes demonstration. Where and when does it all stop? We went through this with the Trayvon Martin situation where you had these ego-driven, adrenaline-motivated, angry and frightened young men, both Trayvon and his killer. Tragic. Mr. Zimmerman, I think his name is. Now, the public was prepared for violence by the subtle prediction of no indictment against Officer Wilson through the media, and including the governor of Missouri announcing an increase in police presence, including the National Guard, a hint of martial law on the streets of Ferguson. That seemed subtle but deliberate. Multiple people, including the parents of Michael Brown, were preaching calm and peaceful demonstration in the spirit of Martin Luther King, and much of the violence came from people outside of the Ferguson local community to stir up more anxiety and racial tension. I have friends who live there, many of whom were actually born there. They're upset as well, but would have handled this entire matter differently with far less local destruction, possibly none. Demonstration, protestation, but they wouldn't burn down their own stores, where their now mothers and grandmothers and godmothers and aunts must travel miles away to find groceries and other pertinent things. And by the way, where were the National Guard, the fire departments, the police officers who were sworn to serve and protect the people on the night of the announcement when it came to protecting places of business more readily? They seem more scarce than expected to me from what I could see on television. And they are now, these same officers are becoming more suspicioned by millions who breathe animus and frustration, not just black people, against the police officers. They have animus and distrust and disrespect. There's a growing nationwide disrespect, distrust in the same police forces. We need to protect us from the violence, both against them as well as the public. Recently in Florida, a man, it wasn't a black man, white men set his house on fire, waiting for the officers to come, and he gunned them down. He killed one, injured another, and was prepared to injure several more, but an off-duty police officer was getting ready to go to work, saw him and shot the perpetrator and killed him. But that shows an example or demonstration of the angst, the distrust, the anger at the police officers. That used to be one of the most respected and integrous professions in American society. Now it's looked at as a bunch of thugs and drug pushers, gangbangers almost. It's a catch-22, and a catch-22 is a problematic situation for which the only solution is denied by a circumstance inherent in the problem or by a rule. In other words, if the lights are out in a room, one can't seem to find the light switch to turn them back on. Catch-22. If one locks their keys in a car, it's not possible to unlock the car to retrieve them because the keys are locked in it. If one lacks work experience, that same person can't get a job to gain the experience. If you have to have work experience and you got to find a job to get, and you can't get a job. So if police are not trusted as public servants because we think they are a threat to public safety, then how can we rely on them to protect us from who and whatever is the threat? The law enforcement system itself is on trial, and media is doing all it can to keep the tension going, as they did with the Ebola situation and anything else they can use to create headlines that drive their greedy and manipulative industry. We need to wake up to this. The public needs to be aware. I repeat, much of the poisonous, intimidating, and insulting venom is driven by media, who are doing their level best to create the tension and attention that provides them with as much incitement for news fodder as possible. It's like a scam and a sham in many cases. Now, many may and perhaps should be asking, why did NFL running back Adrian Peterson get dragged through the court system and suspended from his career for disciplining his child, even if excessively? But a white cop is exonerated in the killing of an unarmed young black man in America. Well, however you see this, this is what I'm calling a physician heal thyself matter, where we, African Americans, as a people, and other people of color, must take responsibility for the change we want and for our part in creating its need. We have created a need for change ourselves. We can point the finger all day long, but that's giving our power away. We must now take responsibility for we have, unconsciously and culture, created for and sometimes against ourselves and as ourselves. Blaming the white man is of no value or virtue at this particular time around, because as long as there are races, there's going to be racism in varying forms of manifestation and in every culture worldwide. But as people of color in America, we must reclaim our hearts, our heads, our homes, our churches, and our communities from a prolific toss-the-ball mentality of blame and giving our personal power away. The media portrays us as they desire to, based either on their or somebody else's conspiratorial agenda. But they can't control what happens in our homes, and they can't control what happens in our head. They can influence it. And even then, only with our compliance or our concession. As Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can make you feel inferior without your permission. Now, I want to say emphatically, right off the bat, I am 1,000% against the cryptically legal expulsion and killing of any American citizen by police officers, especially an unarmed American citizen, by police officers, and especially in the alarming numbers that African American youths are being killed. In most cases, the presumed offenders could have been simply wounded or otherwise temporarily incapacitated with stun guns, etc. But they were instead all but randomly murdered, just shot down like animals in hunting season. Now this has got to stop. It's unacceptable. It must change, and it will. It's a known and proven fact that African Americans are disproportionately killed, arrested, and incarcerated when compared with other ethnic groups in this country, especially Anglo-Americans. The system is obviously flawed. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that. And actually, it's flawed with regard to prosecution and legal integrity. And the data is there to prove this. It's all over. It's very obvious. Another concern I have, however, as a father of a 20-year-old son, who just left to go back to Chicago from Thanksgiving, and I have an 18-year-old daughter, my concern is what we as parents, particularly African American parents, can and should do to keep our children out of situations often triggered by unruly teenagers themselves, who also have egos, driven by adrenaline, struggling with anger, poverty, ignorance, lack of spiritual nurture, proper education, and a host of other community and cultural maladies. Now, most parents do their best to teach, train, and positively influence their young, but far too many don't, especially children who are having children, expecting grandparents to fill in the gaps or blanks, both domestically and financially. This is a whole other subject, but it bears mentioning here. Parenting skills are lacking profoundly, particularly within our African American community, and not exclusively, because all communities experience terrible parenting skills these days. The African American community must raise its own bar, though, and pick up its own slack. The blame game hasn't worked for us. Neither will another march. Yes, we shall overcome and must, but this time we must and shall overcome ourselves as a people more than someone or something else. We must overcome our own senses and selves and integrity, or lack of it. As a people, prayer meetings are often just another anemic survival technique that has some psychological benefits, but obviously it's not getting the job done. In addition, and perhaps more importantly, or more important than praying and marching, which we've done for decades, we need to make the hard personal decisions and choices to change our values, our behavior, our communal validations as a people. We must ask ourselves why we're in this condition and raise our own consciousness and spiritual awareness far above the trite religious and political rhetoric we've heard and used for decades. And they were powerful initially back in the 20th century. But in this 21st century, even with an African American president, an African American attorney general, and an all but silent or silenced black congressional caucus, it's not working the way we thought it should or the way it has in the past. It has accomplished the things I've just mentioned, but there's still racism, and beyond that, and perhaps more significantly than racism, which I said earlier will always be, we need as a community to get our stuff together, as I would say, our shift together. We are dropping the ball. We are failing at parenting and at family issues and values as a community. Again, neither the government nor the racist organized crime syndicates within it and within the penal system in America care anything about us using the race card to protest obvious and consistent injustices in this country. We've been doing that long enough. They pay no attention to it. In fact, they kind of like it because it takes attention from the real issues. It's dealing with a symptom, not the source. Our ideas and perceptions of shame, scarcity, and fear must not only be addressed, but changed. We need overall course corrections and to change our self-talk or the way we talk to and or about ourselves and even the way we think about ourselves, what we think and why we think it as a people. All people should actually do this, not just black people. We must self-realize and self-actualize by centering ourselves and our souls anew and lose our victim consciousness. And rather than being victims of circumstances, become victors over them. We can do this, but we have to change the thinking. As Wayne Dyer says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. The ball is actually and incumbently in our court, and we must now respond to what is in front of us as a community. Remember, black on black crime in our communities is at an all-time high. There are churches, mosques, synagogues on every corner with liquor stores in between in our communities. We must draw the line in our homes, with or without the support of outside sources, religious or otherwise. We must appreciate all the help we can get, but we must not rely on them alone, all the outside help we can get. We appreciate it, but we must not rely on that alone. We must up our parental work and be more efficient and more responsible in parenting and family experiences within the home, around the table, eating, doing homework together more. I know it's difficult in a lot of situations. Sometimes it's a single parent home, or the parents don't like each other or don't love each other, and there's fighting, and there's substance abuse and sexual abuse and spousal abuse. All that's there. I know that's across the country in all cultures, but we need to rethink what we believe about ourselves, because we create these things consciously and collectively. We create them or invent them in consciousness, and then we invite them into our reality. The victim consciousness creates anger and angst and distrust, and then that manifests in other areas of our lives, from our homes to our classrooms, to the church house, to the schoolhouse, to the courthouse, to the White House, to the doghouse, the crack house, the whorehouse. Our consciousness creates these things. We need to change. Kids skipping class, dropping out of school, hanging out in the streets with no parental response is not acceptable. We need discipline. I know it's rough, and we can't discipline with corporal punishment as in times past, but we can confront more and confront our kids more, confront the issues more in the home, and set standards and examples earlier for our children. Let them see from the beginning certain rules and standards and a certain spirit in the house, a certain attitude, create a certain atmosphere of love and strength and support so that the kids don't feel thrown to the wolves. We must remember we are not raising children, we're raising adults. Did you hear me? We're not raising children, we're raising adults. Our jails and prisons are not filled only because of racism. We are allowing blatant disregard for authority and law, much of which starts in our homes. We do not make children or teach children or train our children to respect our authority, to respect their grandparents and their godparents and their neighbors and their school teachers. And we go down and protect our unruly, wayward kids and defend them against teachers who are some of the lowest paid in the American professional world and should be some of the highest paid professions out there. And we should demand high expectations of these teachers and results. I understand all that. I believe in it. It's never just prayer or Bible study or other religious traditions and rituals in our homes that will do it this time. They don't work these days in ways they seem to have in previous decades when the country seemed different and the culture seemed different. Drastic situations demand drastic navigations and drastic negotiations, beginning with deep self-reflection, personally, corporately, and collectively. We, the people, as the preamble states, must do our part in influencing positive change in the thinking of the culture in these modern and ever-changing times. It's just that simple. Actually, it's that true. I mean, we can't play these games any longer. We can't. We've got to rethink ourselves and stop being so flippant and casual. We mustn't repair wineskins. We must replace them and embrace the new paradigm. Literally, it begins with pausing to go within deeply and endearingly. We must love and value, even reevaluate ourselves more realistically to see how we and where we need to improve and to make renovations and to make changes whenever and however we need to. We're down to the hard wire now. We've got to make a change. We've got to make a difference. We need to soul search and resyncopate the cadence of the soul with the larger expression of vibrations in the universe, positive vibrations. Rethink, reconsider what you believe about yourself, about the culture, about our future, and about our past. That means sometimes forgiving, not necessarily forgetting, but forgiving is actually giving up the right, not the reason, to hurt, or we give up the right to be right. We give up the right, not to the reason to want to retaliate. We just give up the right to retaliate. This is a Thanksgiving season. There was family tensions across the country, even in my own family. And there are legitimate reasons for certain tensions. But forgiveness actually means giving up the right to be right. Or the right, not necessarily the reason, to see other people as less than right or even wrong. We're all on our way to greater enlightenment. We've got to meet each other there in consciousness. I want to help you. That's why I present things like that. I have much more to say about this, and I'll be commenting on subjects as time goes on. We're going to continue to watch what happens, but more importantly, watch what's happening in you and as you. Why you do the things you do, and what part you or I may have in creating the reality that we are experiencing. Because we do have something to do with it. Thoughts are powerful. They're creative. They are inventive. Everything you see created and invented around you, somebody thought about it, dreamed about it, envisioned it, imagined. And images are like magnets. They literally draw you toward them. So be careful what images you allow to pervade your mind. Because what you think about, you bring about. We can make the difference. We can not only make a difference in the world, we can actually make a different world, or make the world different. Will you join me consistently in believing and in trusting and rethinking, or as I said, repenting, recreating? We created this, we can recreate it. We can, you can. The clock and the calendar are our friend. They can prove, approve, disprove, or improve anything. Let's embrace time. It is who we are and who we are becoming. We can do this together. We must, we shall. I think we will. I'm Carlton Pearson. You've been listening to Streaming Consciousness. Stay in touch. Be in touch. Show support if you can, when you can, in whatever way you can. We appreciate it. God bless you. God be you. Goodbye now.